patreon.com/RPG Research, Thursdays, 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Pacific Time, and chat with us during the live broadcast. RPG Research Patreon supporters can access the recorded episodes a month or more before they are available to the general public as a thank you for your support. You can become a Patreon supporter by swinging by patreon.com/RPG Research. Those videos will then later be available on youtube.com/RPG Research. Role-playing game formats we discuss include the original tabletop RPG, usually referred to just as RPG or TRPG. Please, either no T's or just one T. There's no need for a second T, as in TTRPG. That's just wasteful of air and paper and typing and time. So please, just RPG or TRPG for tabletop role-playing games. Live-action role-playing games, LRPG, including LARPs. Electronic role-playing games, aka ERPG, which includes solo games and massive multiplayer online games, everything in between, VR, AR, PR, etc. And then hybrid role-playing games, HRPGs, which also include solo adventure books and modules. This episode is sponsored by the wonderful, wonderful Patreon supporters for the nonprofit RPG Research. We are also sponsored by RPG Therapeutics LLC and Dots RPG through their kind donations to RPG Research. You can learn more about RPG Research, the nonprofit 501c3 research and human services organization, studying the effects of all role-playing game formats and their potential to help improve lives at www.rpgresearch.com. A quick little quote from them: "We are helping people heal and improving the quality of life for diverse populations around the world by providing accessible and inclusive collaborative research-supported programs using music and role-playing games. Researching RPGs since 1983, providing programs in schools since 1985, in therapeutic settings and online since 2004. A 501c3 nonprofit provides an open international community, sharing, studying, and providing accessible and inclusive collaborative music and games to help improve people's lives." You can learn more about RPG Therapeutics LLC, the for-profit professional services company, at rpgtherapeutics.com. 20% of their profits are donated to RPG Research, and the book publications, the profits are donated to RPG Research. And also the nonprofit Dots RPG at dotsrpg.com. They are kindly out there helping advocate for accessibility. They are creating Braille dice and sharing those freely, Braille textbooks, and much more. Check them out again at dotsrpg.com. Our show varies each week, but typically includes the latest general RPG news related to our focus on role-playing games and research, community response and discussion, role-playing game-related theory and application discussions, updates on communities and professionals using role-playing games throughout the world, and often special guests, the latest updates on RPG Research, the RPG Bus, the RPG Trailer, the RPG Tour, RPG Education, and many, many, many other programs that we're involved with in various degrees. And while our primary show hosts are typically Hawk Robinson and John Welker, hosts, co-hosts, and guests may vary from week to week. The RPG Talk Show will begin in a few minutes. This message may repeat. The RPG Talk Show discusses weekly news, information, commentary, discussion, and debate about the effects of all role-playing game formats and their potential uses for professional, educational, recreational, and therapeutic goals. The RPG Talk Show is not about the latest modules and releases. There are plenty of sources for that information. We will mention such releases when related to the aforementioned topics, however. You can learn more about the RPG Talk Show, hosts, guests, and archives of previous episodes on our website at rpgtalkshow.com. You can follow us on Twitter at RPG Talk Show. You can catch our show live on twitch.tv/RPG Research or on youtube.com/RPG Research, Thursdays, 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Pacific Time, and chat with us during the live broadcast. RPG Research Patreon supporters can access the recorded episodes a month or more before they are available to the general public as a thank you for your support. You can become a Patreon supporter by swinging by patreon.com/RPG Research. Those videos will then later be available on youtube.com/RPG Research. Role-playing game formats we discuss include the original tabletop RPG, usually referred to just as RPG or TRPG. Please, either no T's or just one T. There's no need for a second T, as in TTRPG. That's just wasteful of air and paper and typing and time. So please, just RPG or TRPG for tabletop role-playing games. Live-action role-playing games, LRPG, including LARPs. Electronic role-playing games, aka ERPG, which includes solo games and massive multiplayer online games, everything in between, VR, AR, PR, etc. And then hybrid role-playing games, HRPGs, which also include solo adventure books and modules. This episode is sponsored by the wonderful, wonderful Patreon supporters for the nonprofit RPG Research. We are also sponsored by RPG Therapeutics LLC and Dots RPG through their kind donations to RPG Research. You can learn more about RPG Research, the nonprofit 501c3 research and human services organization, studying the effects of all role-playing game formats and their potential to help improve lives at www.rpgresearch.com. A quick little quote from them: "We are helping people heal and improving the quality of life for diverse populations around the world by providing accessible and inclusive collaborative research-supported programs using music and role-playing games. Researching RPGs since 1983, providing programs in schools since 1985, in therapeutic settings and online since 2004. A 501c3 nonprofit provides an open international community, sharing, studying, and providing accessible and inclusive collaborative music and games to help improve people's lives." You can learn more about RPG Therapeutics LLC, the for-profit professional services company, at rpgtherapeutics.com. 20% of their profits are donated to RPG Research, and the book publications, the profits are donated to RPG Research. And also the nonprofit Dots RPG at dotsrpg.com. They are kindly out there helping advocate for accessibility. They are creating Braille dice and sharing those freely, Braille textbooks, and much more. Check them out again at dotsrpg.com. Our show varies each week, but typically includes the latest general RPG news related to our focus on role-playing games and research, community response and discussion, role-playing game-related theory and application discussions, updates on communities and professionals using role-playing games throughout the world, and often special guests, the latest updates on RPG Research, the RPG Bus, the RPG Trailer, the RPG Tour, RPG Education, and many, many, many other programs that we're involved with in various degrees. And while our primary show hosts are typically Hawk Robinson and John Welker, hosts, co-hosts, and guests may vary from week to week. The RPG Talk Show will begin in a few minutes. This message may repeat. The RPG Talk Show discusses weekly news, information, commentary, discussion, and debate about the effects of all role-playing game formats and their potential uses for professional, educational, recreational, and therapeutic goals. The RPG Talk Show is not about the latest modules and releases. There are plenty of sources for that information. We will mention such releases when related to the aforementioned topics, however. You can learn more about the RPG Talk Show, hosts, guests, and archives of previous episodes on our website at rpgtalkshow.com. You can follow us on Twitter at RPG Talk Show. You can catch our show live on twitch.tv/RPG Research or on youtube.com/RPG Research, Thursdays, 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Pacific Time, and chat with us during the live broadcast. RPG Research Patreon supporters can access the recorded episodes a month or more before they are available to the general public as a thank you for your support. You can become a Patreon supporter by swinging by patreon.com/RPG Research. Those videos will then later be available on youtube.com/RPG Research. Role-playing game formats we discuss include the original tabletop RPG, usually referred to just as RPG or TRPG. Please, either no T's or just one T. There's no need for a second T, as in TTRPG. That's just wasteful of air and paper and typing and time. So please, just RPG or TRPG for tabletop role-playing games. Live-action role-playing games, LRPG, including LARPs. Electronic role-playing games, aka ERPG, which includes solo games and massive multiplayer online games, everything in between, VR, AR, PR, etc. And then hybrid role-playing games, HRPGs, which also include solo adventure books and modules. This episode is sponsored by the wonderful, wonderful Patreon supporters for the nonprofit RPG Research. We are also sponsored by RPG Therapeutics LLC and Dots RPG through their kind donations to RPG Research. You can learn more about RPG Research, the nonprofit 501c3 research and human services organization, studying the effects of all role-playing game formats and their potential to help improve lives, at www.rpgresearch.com. A quick little quote from them. We are helping people heal and improving the quality of life for diverse populations around the world by providing accessible and inclusive collaborative research-supported programs using music and role-playing games. Researching RPGs since 1983, providing programs in schools since 1985, in therapeutic settings and online since 2004. A 501c3 nonprofit provides an open international community, sharing, studying, and providing accessible and inclusive collaborative music and games to help improve people's lives. You can learn more about RPG Therapeutics LLC, the for-profit professional services company, at rpgtherapeutics.com. 20% of their profits are donated to RPG Research, and the book publications, the profits are donated to RPG Research. And also the nonprofit Dots RPG at dotsrpg.com. They are kindly out there helping advocate for accessibility. They are creating Braille dice and sharing those freely, Braille textbooks, and much more. Check them out again at dotsrpg.com. Our show varies each week, but typically includes the latest general RPG news related to our focus on role-playing games and research, community response and discussion, role-playing game-related theory and application discussions, updates on communities and professionals using role-playing games throughout the world, and often special guests, the latest updates on RPG Research, the RPG Bus, the RPG Trailer, the RPG Tour, RPG Education, and many, many, many other programs that we're involved with in various degrees. And while our primary show hosts are typically Hawk Robinson and John Welker, hosts, co-hosts, and guests may vary from week to week. The RPG Talk Show discusses weekly news, information, commentary, discussion, and debate about the effects of all role-playing game formats and their potential uses for professional, educational, recreational, and therapeutic goals, and archives of previous episodes on our website at rpgtalkshow.com. You can follow us on Twitter at RPG Talk Show. You can catch our show live on twitch.tv/RPG Research or on youtube.com/RPG Research, Thursdays, 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Pacific Time, and chat with us during the live broadcast. RPG Research Patreon supporters can access the recorded episodes a month or more before they are available to the general public as a thank you for your support. You can become a Patreon supporter by swinging by patreon.com/RPG Research. Those videos will then later be available on youtube.com/RPG Research. Role-playing game formats we discuss include the original tabletop RPG, usually referred to just as RPG or TRPG. Please, Either no T's or just one T. There's no need for a second T, as in TTRPG. That's just wasteful of air and paper and typing and time. So please, just RPG or TRPG for tabletop role-playing games. Live-action role-playing games, LRPG, including LARPs. Electronic role-playing games, aka ERPG, which includes solo games and massive multiplayer online games, everything in between, VR, AR, PR, etc. And then hybrid role-playing games, HRPGs, which also include solo adventure books and modules. This episode is sponsored by the need to reinitialize. Come on.
How many people have we lost so far?
One. And then we gained him back. They're probably seeing if the problem's on their end.
Hey, do we have audio now? There we go. Now we're getting somewhere. For some reason, it changed itself to mute. So, I'm going to stop and start again because audio was not cooperating.
Thank you for your patience. We will be right on the air.
Okay, and that one doesn't belong there. Let's try that. Take 3.
The RPG Talk Show discusses weekly news, information, commentary, discussion, and debate about the effects of all role-playing game formats and their potential uses for professional, educational, recreational.
I lost my...
Hello and welcome to the RPG Talk Show. I'm your host, Hawk Robinson, and today is May 20th, 2019, and today we also have...
John Welker.
And Danielle Whitworth.
Welcome, welcome. We're having a little bit of technical issues there. Windows resetting stuff, and we've got to turn things on, and we're still settling into the new studio setup here. But we're getting there bit by bit. So you've already heard, if you've been listening to the stream, it's the audio is telling you what we do, so we don't need to go through all that spiel again. So let's take it away to John for This Week in the News.
All right. His first article is about literacy at International Literacy Association. They have gaming literacies, spatially, materially, and analog learning in a digital age. Just published the 17th. There we go. Now I can choose between talking properly or seeing the screen. There you go. Just brand new article published. I haven't had a quite chance to read it fully because I have to get past the paywall first. The author explored the literacy practices in tabletop gaming communities, focusing on the role of spatiality and materiality in non-digital contexts. The study broadens how literacy research engages with social-cultural analysis of primary analog settings, building on experience in playing the role-playing games Dungeons and Dragons. The author analyzed how literacy shaped the collaborative storytelling and the interpretation of complex rules mechanics required for play. 26-month study.
What's the sample size? What was the N? N equals?
N equals, if they have it in there. They don't say.
Okay. Yeah, so we'll use my university access and get the full version of that and check that out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Otherwise, it's like $7 for 48 hours.
Yeah.
All right. So lots of new things coming out. Starting with the One Ring, second edition is coming out.
Right.
And apparently Moria got held back to be part of second edition.
Right. Which is already years behind schedule.
The one other interesting thing about second edition, beyond the fact that it is a second edition, is the fact that the time frame jumps. We are now into the Lord of the Rings.
Years. Well, just shy of. So whereas the first edition was 5 years after the death of Smaug, this one's about 25 years after, which is just about 5 years or so, if I remember correctly, 5 or 10 years before the events in the Lord of the Rings.
So I'm assuming...
No. I think it was a 50-year gap, wasn't it?
I thought
We had to double check, yes. It's either 30 or 50 years. I can't remember which.
I'm pretty sure it's 30. That's why it's the 30-year campaign.
Yeah. So no, I guess so. Yeah, 25 years. But basically, yeah, just before the Lord of the Rings and such. And they do show in their new logo the Lord of the Rings role playing. It's the One Ring, the Lord of the Rings role playing game, because it's leading into that.
So I was gonna say it covers into the events.
Yeah, it's going to go into there.
So I'm going to assume that corruption levels, danger levels are just going to go up everywhere.
It totally depends. It depends on where you are, because Sauron was doing things and some of the free peoples were doing things. So it is a highly dynamic time period, that is for sure.
And
and the only thing I'm concerned, I wish they were doing. They're doing as one large tome, like over 300 pages, kind of like Pathfinder. And I really don't like that. Like, I don't like that Pathfinder does that. It's much better. The early version of the One Ring role-playing game was a slipcover with 2 volumes. The slipcover had issues, but I liked that it was in 2 volumes. Mm-hmm. And that's generally been a pretty standard format in role-playing gaming, because the players have their knowledge, the DM has theirs, and they should be separate. Mm-hmm. Not only that, when you have that big a tome, it makes it harder to have good organization. Unfortunately, Cubicle 7 doesn't have the best track record for their table contents and indexes. They tend to roll those in after the fact. They'll release an addendum that you can download of a complete index and such. They've done that a number of times. So I really wish they were. I wish they were separating their adventurer's guide from their lore master's guide.
I agree.
And when you're at 300 pages, like
well over 300.
But if you're thinking about it,
352 to be exact.
Yeah.
352 pages.
That's a lot.
Okay. So now, let's say you're creating characters. So you need at least one for every 2 persons.
Right. Well, exactly. So when I buy, as you see, I buy a lot of gaming stuff.
Right.
A lot. Thousands and tens of thousands of dollars of gaming stuff, sadly.
Yeah.
There will be a starter set,
Good. Still. When I buy a game and I decide I want to run this game, I usually buy one Dungeon Master's Guide or equivalent, Lore Master's Guide, etc., and 3 or 4 player's guides. A minimum of 2. I'll buy at least 2 player's guides minimum, and then if it gets used a lot, I'll add a 3rd or 4th one.
5th edition, which I can see from this far, has 5. I can see 5 of them.
5 what?
5 players'
handbooks.
Players' handbooks.
5 or 4? I thought I only had 4.
I thought it was 5. I think maybe. Oh no, the other one's something else.
Yeah.
Okay.
Your vision's better than mine.
So and I
These
actually have 2
glasses help
DMGs.
really well.
That I've got enough for 2 tables to have 2 players' handbooks and 2 DMGs simultaneously, because it's so popular, But in general, 1 DMG, 2 players' handbooks. Having to buy the entire tome every time. That doesn't help me. So I'm sad that they're doing that. I'm excited about the rest of it, but I wish they were breaking it into 2 tomes instead of 1 big one.
Yep. I wonder if they'll come up with afterwards a player's guide, so that the DM has all. Sometimes
they
I
haven't
feel
historically
like that.
done that.
Okay.
They haven't done it with most of their products, as far as I know. At least the ones we've used with Doctor Who and the others and such. They don't seem to separate them.
Okay.
So, anyway, let's. We have a lot to cover today.
That was the One Ring and the
release date's meaningless with Cubicle 7. They do good
they
quality.
just said holiday season.
Yeah, they do good quality, but they are terrible at meeting deadlines. You just have to be patient with them. When it comes out, it'll be a nice product. It'll have some glitches and stuff like that, but it's generally really good product. But you just have to be patient. Don't expect it to be on time.
Wizards of the Coast is having a lot of releases in the Dungeon Riding.
Oh my goodness, are they?
Now this is unusual.
It's getting hard for me to keep up.
They made a point of a slow release schedule.
Yes.
And this year they're like going, if you call a shotgun slow,
Well, I think it was because they got the board, right? The main stakeholders. The CEO talked about the D&D property last year multiple times because it's been on the rise so much, and they've got movie deals and everything else happening. It's no longer the little redheaded stepchild that they beat around.
Yay, Hasbro!
It's become a serious intellectual property for them, and so I think after the last stakeholders meeting, I think they want to see capitalizing on that a lot more.
Right.
So that's two-edged sword because I try to keep up, but I'm struggling.
Well, and Dungeons & Dragons has fallen to glut a couple times.
Yeah. Well, they're not doing the splat book thing like they did third edition so far.
So everything I've seen has been
the annual
really
campaigns,
well put out.
And pretty controlled releases as far as that goes. It's all the other periphery products. Speaking of which,
well, this year's is going to have a lot of modules. We're going to start with the Ghosts.
Because on the 17th they just had their big broadcast, right? Did you tune in on that?
Yes.
Okay. We did.
I
didn't we?
We did.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
In the
So tomorrow, Adventures on the High Seas, Ghosts of Saltmarsh comes out. This is a remake of Sinister.
And it should be arriving at my house tomorrow.
Yep, I can't wait. We'll have Danger at Dunwater, Final Enemies, Salvage Operation, Isle of Abbey, Tomorrow's Fate, and the Styes. Now, the first three are all from the series, the British series, Sinister Secret of Saltmarsh.
Well, okay, so that's a question. We keep saying that, but there's the UK series. Are the U series also the British series? Because I'm wondering if we're conflating the two. Because there's a UK series and then a U series. So,
well, it is U1 and U2.
Yeah, U1, 2, and 3, and then there's UK. I want to keep going, and I'm going to check that.
They're from the English adjacent area.
Well, I'm just not so sure about
the
that.
Salvage Operations, Isle of Abbey, and Tomato's Fate, the Styes all came from Dungeon magazines while it was still in print. I don't know about anybody else, but I miss having an actual physical magazine.
Okay, so U1, Sinister Secret of Saltmarsh, really great Scooby-Doo style introductory adventure. If you want one that isn't heavy on violence, Scooby-Doo, where are you? Uh-oh, Raggy. If you want one that's not really heavy on violence, has nice mystery, and so the difference is in Scooby-Doo, the ghosts tend to be people faking the ghosts, right? But this is D&D, so you expect the ghosts to be real.
Yep.
This does some wonderful twists in both directions throughout as you unravel things. It's a good one, and I've used it with some troubled teens and such that were really struggling, and it's interesting, and you can stick it anywhere that you want. There's some recommendations for Greyhawk and etc. But yeah, this is a good one. So as far as because here's the UK series. It says UK.
Right.
That's the British series.
I'm pretty sure.
And they have the UK flag and everything.
Right.
Well, that's what I'm wondering is, are these also earlier? Because I don't see anything.
I think it says on the back.
I'll take a U.
And it says right there on the front. Premiere from the United Kingdom.
Oh, I was looking at all the fine print. Okay. So they must have. I haven't looked at the release cycle, but maybe they did the U1 through 3 first, and these came out later.
Possibly.
Let's see, 83, 80, yeah, 80.
No offense, America, but the UK series is some of the best ones we've done.
82, yeah, okay. 80, 82, and 83. 83 onward. And yeah, the UK series has generally gotten good praise. They've been pretty exceptional. So yeah, okay, cool. I kept meaning every time I brought that up to go verify, and I didn't, and I just wanted to make sure. So good. They are all UK.
Next product is the Essentials.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. Now this is kind of like the starter set. It happens in the same area. You're still low-level characters. It's going to focus more on character creation. The other one starts out with pre-gens. It starts with. Now that doesn't mean you can't use the pre-gens in this other one. There's plenty of pre-gens available for Dungeons & Dragons that are official pre-gens. There's no shortage of those.
So I was reading more detailed reviews and such, like the ICV2 and things like that.
Right.
Even her correspondence and such. So it's levels 1 through 6.
That makes it one level more than the starter set.
Exactly. It comes with the core 4 classes plus the bard.
Right.
And the point is it's supposed to walk you through the character generation process as opposed to the playing process. So they said that the starter set was about learning to play with pre-gens.
Right.
This one's about how to make your own character through the play process. So a little different. Little bit
Through
different
the play
approach.
process. That kind of sounds a little bit like the 0 level modules.
Maybe. We don't know yet. And it is, now, you
And
guys have
one.
heard me time and time and time again rail about the lack of a good introductory set in all of role-playing, including D&D, since the 1982 Frank Metzer Red Box Basic D&D, 1982-83. And we've many episodes, and we've been doing actual play and unboxing and explaining all that. Now again, introductory set, not good reference set. Like when you want to go back and make characters and such,
Right.
It's badly organized. But to introduce people, hands down, this is the gold standard from a neuroscience perspective of learning in layers, step at a time. Start very simple and then layer in as complex as you want, but do it incrementally through gameplay. Not just how to play the game and make a character for the player through 3 solo adventures, but how to get your first group together and DM your first group through an entire adventure, hand-holding, railroaded, training wheels, all of that. And then, then go on to the other introductory B series adventures that also do a very good job of assuming you are new to this and helping you through.
Railroads into a TBK on the first encounter.
That's just you guys. Well, and then I've had people through our videos say, no, what about Chaosium? Well, so I checked out the Chaosium Rune Quest and such. And it does, like most games, really good examples, step by step, of making a character, learning the rules. But you're not playing. You're just reading short story snippets.
Right.
That's not the same as interactively learning, which experiential learning is, by far more effective. And
Which is
so,
why-
sorry, I looked at the 78, I looked at the 80 version, I looked at the 83, I looked at all the versions. I can't find anything that is similar to the 83 Menser D&D.
Yeah, you looked at the Forbidden.
Until
We looked at the one
I
who
was
must
like, you
not
know
be
what?
named.
I was wondering why this version has the same cover. I'd always wondered when it came out, of like, are they trying to recreate this? So this is 1983.
Right.
This is 2007 or something. What is this? Doesn't say. Well, interesting thing, in the player's manual, it doesn't give any credits. All the credits are only in the DM's guide.
Right.
Which is very interesting. So it's hard to find the info on that.
Was this the one that came with the miniatures?
No minis, but lots of cards and counters and everything. It's got a lot of stuff.
Got it.
Dice and everything. Cards, dice, all of that. This came out in 2011. Wow, that was later than I thought. August 2011. So, and these are very different covers, but the box cover is a copy of the 83 Menser cover. So I got my hands on a used copy of this. Wasn't that hard.
Imagine that.
Other editions are going for like $800, but this is the edition that we usually don't speak of. The Forbidden Edition.
The edition
one
that's not be
that
named.
starts with the letter F and is a 4-letter word. Version 4-letter word
Written
starts
by
with an
Jar
F.
Jar Binks.
Or if you do it with the TH at the end, then it's 6 letters. The 4th edition Dungeons and Dragons. They actually tried to follow the formula.
Okay.
This, at least formulaically, is at the closest I've seen, both on the player side and the DM side, walking through step by step. They don't do it as well. Part of that is the added complexity of the rules is so much more. They have entire pages of just reading the rules still, which
Right.
breaks the efficacy of learning.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't do it as well as the Menser version, but it is the next closest version. Interestingly, the player's manual, unlike the Menser version, is pretty much entirely learning the story as you go through. The whole
Right.
thing, all the way through, it is not a reference book at all. You do not, after you've played, it's going to be really kind of useless to go back and use as a reference manual. It is your first time exposure. Hand it to your friend, let them go through it as a solo adventure, then your next one. And then it walks you through doing your first encounter as a DM, and then your first campaign with your friends, assuming at least one of them. And it continues the story. The story's all connected. So it has some things going for it in that respect, other than the version of the game that it is. But, and the people involved with that were James Wyatt was the lead for design. Also Jeremy Crawford, Mike Merles, Bill Slavisek, and Rodney Thompson. And then we got others in here as well. But, yeah. So there is another version that has that. And I have the others on the way, although one Noble Knights book sent me completely the wrong thing. It was supposed to be a version of D&D from either 94 or 99 starter set.
Mm-hmm.
They sent me Lord of the Rings Combat System Magazine 27 or something. Completely wrong.
Yeah.
So I'm contacting through Amazon going, it's not what I ordered for 30-something bucks. You need to give me what I ordered. And of course, they only listed one left, so now I'm afraid it's going to be gone. But the next one up was like $160. Yeah. So anyway, I've got some other versions coming as well to see if maybe this was a theme like the Menser thing. Maybe the other version, because there was a version 91 that came same time as Rule Cyclopedia. None of us knew about. There was a version of 94 that came out, but John didn't know about it. I didn't know about it, and a version of 99. And one of them I can't get because they want like $800-900 for it. I can't find a cheap version of it. So we'll have to see.
Right.
More as it happens.
Speaking of introductory things, they are coming out with some new products in their Young Adventurers Guide series.
Yes. Not to mention a whole bunch of solo adventures and solo CDs later this fall, the CD versions, which I'm curious about. Are they going to be interactive or just story? They're Endless Quest series. So To Catch a Thief and those others, this is all through Target.
They're going to make them CDs, though?
They offer, so you got the paperbacks, right? And these are the choose your own, these are interactive Endless Quest Dungeons & Dragons books,
I actually read one of those.
Okay. They also offer CD versions, which you can pre-order. Well, but if it's if it's choose your own, if it's interactive,
it has to be.
Well, I'm not so sure. I'm wondering if they make it into one path.
Okay.
And just read it to you. I would love that it's an audio role-playing game. But if it is interactive and you choose the track numbers, so right, which is what we used to do with 8-track. Yeah, pre-order won't be available till September at the earliest. So I will be looking into those just to see, though, to see.
Yeah. There's another thing in September that we're going to have to get that's also a Choose Your Own Adventure, and that is the second Choose Your Own Adventure board game. That's when the pre-order starts coming out. September.
We don't have to buy everything that comes through. As long as we've got a sample.
Okay, I'm going to have to buy that.
That's fine. I can only have so much money to go around, guys.
We are going to have to
We're not using the donors' money for these things. I keep using mine. So, and I'm getting married, so I'm probably going to have less freedom on that going forward. So
I didn't necessarily mean you as a we.
Spending is going to go down a little bit.
Yeah, that's already been signaled.
We can be us too, because I have a very extensive board game collection.
Yeah, you guys feel free. But so what I try to do is I try to get samples, and then if they have six in that series, as long as I get an example of what that series is like, that's generally good enough for us to have an idea.
Ooh, we should play the D&D one again. It's kind of a adventure. It's like Arkham Horror. It's the D&D version of Arkham Horror.
So, Baldur's Gate.
Yep. Yeah. Speaking of Baldur's Gate.
That's this year's major distribution.
Yeah.
Is Baldur's Gate's Descent into Avernus. Avernus is a section of hell. It's not basically. It's a suburb of hell.
Right. One of the layers.
Yeah. And it is a 1st through 13th level. Probably no since it's at 13th level.
Yeah, it's quite the cover on there too for the fancy version. Big skull and everything. It's like, oh yeah, the ones who are against gaming are going to love that cover. It's the box. That's the fancy box cover.
Yeah. The weird stuff, and that's the copy I'm going to get. I get all the fancy covers because how I get mine.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
The one of the unusual things about Descent into Avernus is it's supposed to.
That would look really good in all of my game stuff.
Yes, how much is that box set?
I don't know if they're giving pricing yet because they're not doing pre-orders yet.
Right. Oh.
You
This is
gotta
all
learn to
on
prepare.
IGN. Dungeons & Dragons' new adventure sends players to hell. Baldur's Gate takes center stage in this new adventure, but things are different. 256-page book released September 17th. Focus on the city of Baldur's Gate as it slowly succumbs to the sway of corrupt powers and evil gods. Adventurers will then get the chance to descend into the first layer of the Nine Hells to discover whether there's a chance for redemption. So that's Baldur's Gate, Descent into Avernus, standard and alternate cover by Hydro 74. Designed by Chris Perkins, principal narrative designer for D&D, and described as Hell Meets Mad Max, Fury Road.
Yes.
The adventure will take players from level 1 to level 13 as they explore the war-torn Avernus, the fire-blasted first level of the Nine Hells that's locked in an endless war between the devils and the chaotic demons of the Abyss. Players will see the Blood War, as it's called, firsthand, and may even get the chance to dive into it themselves if they're brave or foolish enough. An alternate cover of the game by Hydro 74 is also planned alongside the standard version, which is available everywhere.
And there's the
And there's a
$500 version available.
Custom dice pack, also released separately alongside the adventure book. Kit comes with a set of themed dice, the box itself, that can be used as a dice tray, a map of Avernus, and more. So lots and lots of stuff.
Some of the things that stand out with this one is, one, the vehicles. Which is also brings up in the second point, which is the temptations. You know, Dungeon Masters will entice their heroes with devil's deals designed to lure adventurers in the ultimate temptations of power and treasure. They're saying it's going to be very, very difficult not to make a deal with somebody in hell.
Yeah.
Got the moral implications.
So those who have issues about D&D and role-playing games, this is going to be great fodder for their issues.
And the vehicles run on soul coins. Each coin has an
You
actual
almost spit
soul.
that out, didn't you?
So if you want your vehicle to do something special, feed it another soul.
Boy, I hope that's not like a political environmental statement.
I have no idea.
I'm much happier with it being the mystical, theoretical, religious, whatever concept of you must lose your soul versus like some sort of environmental equivalent of driving cars is destroying our souls, whatever.
But last night you said...
I think it's the because it's just we want the paladin driving that thing to feel bad.
So anyway, that'll be interesting to see how that unfolds. We'll have to check that out. Probably not one of the ones we would use for our at-risk populations.
I don't think so.
It claims it's going to be an easier introduction than the previous ones.
An easier introduction to hell?
That's
my point.
Is rather complex.
Because we generally shy away from the games that are going to turn all our at-risk youth into murder hobos.
First one's free.
Yeah. So we'll have to see. Okay, what else we got here?
Eberron.
I'm changing your
Eberron.
alignment.
Coming out in 2019 is also another campaign book. It's Eberron.
One or the other.
We have been doing it for a long time with online version of the rules, and there's even D&D Adventures League coverage for it. But it doesn't. It hasn't had a hardbound back book yet. They're finally doing it. This will be outside of Ravenloft, which was made part of the Forgotten Realms. This will be the first completely off-world setting.
Cool. Oh, and the other thing to mention about the new starter set, the D&D Essentials.
Yes.
Well, we haven't talked about it yet, right? Well,
We mentioned it.
We mentioned it. So they are now doing a new D&D starter set, which the emphasis is on character making instead of play. That will only be available at Target in June.
Yeah.
We forgot to emphasize that. June
Target
24th at North American Target.
Hasbro and a few other gaming things. Target has been making some really good
Big deals.
backdoor
Well, they need it
deals.
because they've been struggling in other areas. So that will be available for $25 June 24th at North American Target stores, and then everywhere else September 3rd.
Now
That's a big gap. That's really hurting the few small game stores are left.
Yeah, so I have to wait 3 months after everybody else has gotten it, and now who's anybody left to buy it? And when do you think Amazon's going to get it?
Well, it says everywhere else, so they probably have an exclusivity deal. Target first, and then September.
What was the tradition with online versus brick and mortar? The brick and mortars were getting their products 2 weeks in ahead of time.
Right, except that's been getting screwed up a lot lately. Amazon's been releasing stuff before they're supposed to.
Not
That just
only
happened with, did you see that with our Kickstarter?
Yeah.
With The Expanse? Amazon had it out like months, but I still don't have mine. And it's already been out on Amazon for a while. And it wasn't supposed to be.
Yeah. Kickstarter people are supposed to get their products first.
Yeah.
That's
And they're like, well, we'll put a little extra content and stuff like there went our exclusive scoop for our show and stuff, you know.
Right.
I put a big chunk into it.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a big no-no.
they've actually stated that they're not going to give the bricks and mortars preference over Amazon anymore.
Yeah, that's
So
going to
now
kill
they can get it earlier
the
and
small
undercut it.
ones. Yeah, that's going to kill the small ones.
Mhm.
With fewer left. So, and the only way to keep them going, if you want to have a local game store, is pay the extra little bit and wait the extra little bit of time to get it there, so that you get the service from your local game store.
I get all
if you
my
want to
books.
have a local game store to play at,
Mhm.
you need to support the game store. In Israel, they had Romach. They had a game store, people played, and they were doing therapy there through role-playing gaming.
Mm-hmm.
And because the store was struggling to compete with Amazon and such, after a few years, they went under. So, and that means not only did the gamers not have a place to play anymore, the therapy groups of like over 30 kids a week were no longer getting they didn't have a place to do it, and they still don't. So that's support your local friendly neighborhood local game store.
Speaking of supporting people, May 15th. No, that's when the article came out. An article for the Red Nose Day website, and Critical Role actually published one. Red Nose Day this year is a choose your own adventure with Stephen Colbert. Critical Role has joined the 2019 Red Nose Day campaign with none other than, drumroll please,
The geeks are inheriting the earth.
yeah, the illustrious Stephen Colbert, and we've been longtime mega fans of Stephen and his work. Matthew Mercer, sorry, not Mesner. Matthew
Mercer is unfortunately persona non grata now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Our beloved dungeon master Matthew Mercer will run a 1-on-1 mini adventure with Stephen next week, and we couldn't think of a better way to help support.
That's gonna
next
be
week. That means it's this week.
May 15th. It already.
That's
happened?
the article, so it's
that's
supposed
what
to
it's
be
written. Okay, so it's probably already happened.
when it's Red Nose Day.
I don't know. 19th, May 19th update. May 23rd, which is May 23rd.
Okay, so in
I do have
3
better eyesight
days.
than you. Over here.
So we'll have to.
You're the right distance away right now.
So we'll just have to get in on that and see what we can see then.
You guys will have to do that. I'll be 21. Yeah, that's Thursday. I'll still be immersing, trying to get everything composed. And
We don't have anything scheduled to broadcast, but we'll be watching it
Yeah.
ourselves, and
You
I'll
guys
report
will. You guys
on
will.
it on Monday.
Yeah.
Will you send me that link to it and then you can go to pull it up?
So you should send that to the whole staff.
Okay.
It's
Well,
on the
it is
volunteers list.
in the intern.
All right.
And
Now
I will research this.
we're going to touch this very carefully, very distant with a 10-foot cattle prod. Only just briefly mention it and move on. We do not have any pony in this race, and people should be aware of it, though.
Open letter to Dr. Anthony Bean from Geek Therapy.
We don't need to read the letter.
I was going to.
Okay. Just summarize.
I was going to say, to read it yourself, go to geektherapy.com/open-letter-2-dr-Anthony-Bean. Then you can read the whole article.
For one side of the debate.
Right. Basically, it's a cease and desist letter. Dr. Bean is trying to trademark the phrase geek therapy, and the people that have been running geek therapy for a long time don't like that idea.
Right. So, basically this is a intellectual property rights dispute about the term geek therapy, and there are two different sides of the argument, and it's a controversial situation, and there are people very avidly on each side of the camp. I knew nothing about this before you brought it up the other day, and I'm staying away from this as far as possible. Do not want to be in the middle of this at all. So we'll let the courts and them work it out, and then when there's a final resolution, we will report on that. But basically, one side is saying, no, we already are Geek Therapy and we trademarked it. The other saying, no, I've trademarked it through the patent office. And so there's a debate about who has the rights to use the term Geek Therapy, and it's escalating between lawyers and letters and all of that. And that will sort itself out one way or the other. And again, people are very passionate about each side of their argument in that debate.
Probably as they should be.
Well, let's just
Okay.
report the news on this one and not make any editorial or opinion.
No, I'm just
that's
saying.
editorial. That's too much.
Okay.
Yep.
So let them work it out. Let's move on.
Okay.
Okay. Now, Mindshift at www.kqed.org/Mindshift. This is an NPR website. The article is How Dungeons and Dragons Can Help Kids Develop Social Emotional Learning Skills. For many of the kids who arrive at Lehigh School in Vermont, this is their last chance at school. Like Eagle Peak, it is a referral school. They have serious behavioral challenges, difficulty addressed in traditional settings. It's a democratic school.
The reference to Eagle Peak is on the RPG Therapeutics LLC side, which John and Danielle both work for me over there. So we got RPG Research, nonprofit research community services over here, and RPG Therapeutics LLC over there, and John and Danielle are employees there, and we have a contract with Spokane Public School District at Eagle Peak's alternative schools, and so that's what he's referencing. It's if a kid's struggling in school and gets referred to, let's say, Meade School District to Meade Alternative, and then they try to get through the Meade Alternative system and they aren't able to make it through there, they then get referred to Eagle Peak. And Eagle Peak's basically their last chance to still graduate high school, except for maybe getting sent to a facility.
I was going to say,
pretty much.
Washington State has 3 online schools as well. That they
Right,
probably
but the statistically with the support, without the support structure, it's not about, some of them it is intellectual cognitive struggles, but a lot of it's just their environment is really bad.
And most of those online schools are designed for kids that need a different time schedule or need not to go into the big buildings, but they're able to be self-motivated and do things on their own.
Yeah, online is not good for those who are just struggling just to get through the day. And these kids really need help. And unfortunately, Washington State, I think I can say it. I think it's common knowledge now, right?
It is common knowledge that passed.
Washington State passed a law banning alternative schools as segregational, so that they can no longer have separate schools to provide the resources that these kids need, because they think they think it's creating a separate but equal situation, like in the 60s with black schools, white schools, etc. That it's a separate but equal but not equal type situation. That's a tricky one with the alternative schools, because the other problem is they're not providing equivalent resources in the new schools. Some are, some aren't, district by district, but the state isn't filling the gap.
I think that has more to do with when I was going in high school, they actually kicked out over 200 people from my high school to fill the alternative school.
What?
Anyone who did anything for 6 months at the beginning of one school year got kicked out. It was well known that you got kicked out and sent to the alternative school because they had to fill it.
I don't know. Let's be careful about that. But what is happening is they are shutting down the alternative schools, and some of the staff are getting hired in to help, but others are not. So a lot of these kids, the people who are really getting hurt here are the kids, and so it's really unfortunate. Now our programs there weren't state funded. It is private donations were paying the school for after school activities, and then that's what they were paying the LLC for to pay your guys' wages and all that. So it's not coming out of taxpayer money. So I try to be careful about that. And great results with those kids, right? Just blossom like a flower. So anyway, that's what he was referencing there.
Right. And that's what they're doing here. It is a democratic school. It emphasizes a therapeutic approach to student learning. And they wanted to include role-playing games, Dungeons & Dragons specifically a few years ago. And one of Kyle Callum's students with autism asked if the game could be played in class, and they figured, why not? Let's make this work and see if we can't use its abilities. It's very similar to what we're doing, except we're an outside organization.
Right. Well, because Eagle Peak tried to do this last year themselves, and it blew up.
Right.
Which we're going to talk about how just because you're a therapist and you happen to be a gamer doesn't mean you're going to be good at therapeutic gaming. There are very specific things you need to know, and we're going to have a little bit.
And just because you're good at gaming doesn't make you a therapist.
Oh yeah. Oh my goodness, that's a whole other anything else on your list there?
Nope. That actually brings us into the list of things we can help and help not help.
Okay. So, as you know, I'm a Washington State registered recreational therapist with a background in neuroscience, computer science, research psychology, and music therapy, recreation therapy, etc. Also, I've been a nurse's aide, went through LPN training, although I didn't go for the full LPN that John had, and many other areas. I've studied a lot of different fields over the decades and been involved with gaming since 77 onward. John's been gaming almost as long. He's got the LPN background, the in-home care background, the intensive care background, and of course been training on the rec therapy side and all that since we connected. Danielle's finished her degree in rec therapy, done her internship, just has to sit for the CTR, then CTRC, CTRS to be a certified therapeutic recreation specialist. So here's our biases.
Yeah. And also me and John and Huck have all been first responders as well as other things like
lots
that.
and lots of different medical backgrounds and such. So one thing I want to give some disclaimers up front, because if out of context it might seem like we're saying role-playing games are panacea. We're not at all saying that in the least bit. Role-playing games cannot address every issue that's out there by far.
It will not cure cancer.
Yeah. And
There's no
if
cure
you're
for
a game master and a gamer and such, though people may get some of the inherent benefits that role-playing gaming that research is showing increasingly seems to provide to participants, you should not try to therapize your games, right, as just a game master and such. Just because, and I get emails all the time like, I've had this group and these people really struggle and I've watched them really change and now I'm interested in a career. What do I need to do? Like, well, first of all, don't try to do therapy with your gaming friends. If they happen to get inherent benefits and all that, that's great because of PTSD, things like that. Wonderful. Don't try to be their GM therapist if you don't have professional training and that's not an agreed to relationship that you went into to begin with.
No.
Right? You came together as a gaming group, keep it a gaming group. Really bad things will happen over time if you don't. And I've seen people blur those boundaries and very bad things happen. Really bad things. So be very careful about that. And then if you're professionals and you want to bring role-playing gaming into your facility or into your practice, you may or may not have any previous gaming background. But even if you do have extensive gaming background, depending on your profession, you're not necessarily going to have the tools to put those two together effectively. You're going to make a lot of mistakes along the way. And this is for a lot of different professions that have been trying to do this. And I've been talking to them over the decades. And I recently had an email, a student who, I get emails from students every week, who has about a year and a half left of school and was wondering what classes they should take that would help prepare them for what we do with therapeutic application of role-playing gaming and with different populations, out of the professions out there and the courses to offer. And I've looked at play therapy and Gestalt and drama therapy and music, and all these alternative therapies and all the variations of psychology and psychiatry and medical and medication and all of that, and have come down to music therapy is very, very powerful also. Lots of research on that. But recreation therapy, aka therapeutic recreation, as far as I can tell, is the single best profession to take a recreational activity and reach therapeutic goals, because that's what the profession's been designed to do, working on for about 100 years to try to perfect. You have assessment tools, you have methodologies, based on theory, research, and evidence-based practice. You have tens of thousands of practitioners, you have certification, you have
oversight,
education, oversight, all of that. But specifically trained to take a recreational activity and meet measurable goals. And when we go through the checklist, as we've been doing online, of the 44 criteria of competency for a rec therapist, more than 30 of them are parallel to being a good game master or game player.
And of course, rec therapists are very well at group
Yeah.
Right, we are
So-
explicitly trained in groups as well as one-on-one.
And that's where the two major factors come in, is the group training and the training to use something that someone likes as a therapy.
Right, intrinsic motivation being one of the powerful tools. If you can figure out what they like, they're much more likely to keep at it after discharge and then have a better long-term prognosis. That's a key part of TR philosophy.
It's like if you have an older adult who breaks a hip, having them go out and ski, if they aren't skiers, is probably not the best thing. But if they're avid walkers, getting them out there with ski poles so that way they don't fall over is...
As opposed to going into the gym and doing PT exercises all day long and being really bored with that because it's painful and hard, finding something they enjoy so they forget their pain and focus on the activity so that hopefully they get into a flow state, level of immersion equals flow state, that then they're getting the optimal benefit. And when it comes to skills and other learning, which therapy is a big part of learning there, the optimal learning state is when you're in that flow state that Mihai Csikszentmihalyi talks about. So that's a big part of rec therapy, and it's a big part of therapeutic role-playing gaming. But we make it very clear, it is not a panacea, it's not snake oil, we don't claim it'll fix everything. It's very specific to application. We're really big on APIDE, which is assessment planning, implementation, evaluation, documentation, and re-evaluation assessment, and that's a blah, blah, blah. Very, very important to have assessment to do these things effectively. And part of that is a diagnosis or knowing what the population is that you're working with. So John was kind of grilling me the other day while we were at a kind of slow convention on, what are some of the areas that role-playing gaming is more effective, less effective, and such. And I was like, well, there's a lot, actually. Yeah. So we were just kind of going through that, and I was kind of off the top of my head from all the research I've been doing and the application of the programs I've done, going down the list. So, John, if you wanted, in the time we have, we'll probably have to do more of this another time.
Right.
Because we covered so much news.
So we did start with, what could we do with OCD?
Yeah, so obsessive compulsive disorder. And so OCD itself, maybe not, role-playing game may not be the best application, except that the higher level anxiety, right? Because it's a subset of anxiety disorder. And studies have shown that you can use role-playing gaming to help reduce anxiety through various techniques. Now, the key thing to think of when you're dealing with mental health issues is if it has some efficacy in cognitive behavioral therapy, if there's techniques that are applicable to that, then there's a good possibility that you can implement, again, with the proper training, that you can implement a similar approach to tackle those maladaptive thoughts and behaviors through the game. You'll use the same methodologies, theories, and philosophies of CBT, but you will be gamifying it in that you get more buy-in through the gamification, and by creating an abstract external role that makes it easier to analyze and look at those maladaptive thoughts and feelings as dysfunctional other, and then be able to go back and forth, oh, well, if your knight is doing this and causing all this alienation, they can talk about it in a third-person way, in a way that's safe, and discuss topics that are relevant to themselves.
Right.
But you don't have to do it all as talk therapy and ruin the fun. You can do it through the game, through dialogue with the NPCs and such, and then before and after games, do a little bit of processing discussion and let them enjoy the game. I had a conversation recently, very recently, potential client who was worried that doing therapeutic RPG would ruin their fun of the game because then every time they did D&D, they would think of therapy. And generally what rec therapy shows in general, and I have not seen that be a problem at all with any of our therapeutic role-playing games, but rec therapy shows in general is not only does that not usually happen, it's a very low risk of that happening. Usually you end up enjoying the activity that much more because there's a whole educational process in rec therapy that you end up becoming much better at your favorite activity. So your level of enjoyment becomes even higher, your proficiency goes higher, so your chances for immersion and even higher flow state and even more enjoyment increases by going through this. And then you keep doing it even more throughout your life. So OCD, as far as the obsessive thoughts and behaviors, yes. Well, no. A CBT trained professional could integrate that into the game in a way, but it would have to be a measured way. In and of itself, role-playing gaming is not going to address that.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you get into adaptive. So we've been doing activity analysis and such, and then task analysis. And then there's adaptation. So there's using the game as designed and getting some inherent benefits. Then there's being a professional who's using the game as designed, but as a professional, you're able to play it in certain ways that you can work with groups that would blow up in a normal game store, but you're able to help them achieve therapeutic goals. But you're still playing it as is, maybe a little post and pre-game processing. And then there's adapting the game and the stories and the rules to target specific needs. So you would have to go all the way down that road, I think, to really address OCD. But GAD, generalized anxiety disorder, you've got all sorts of opportunities there to address those things in general. And certainly, like it's proven with depression, suicidal ideations, certain range of the spectra of schizophrenic type spectra. Again, this is under supervision with trained professionals. I can't emphasize this enough.
And if they're currently having delusions, we probably shouldn't be doing anything with them.
Well, so the research is conflicting.
Right.
In a controlled manner with people, inpatient schizophrenics, if they're just handed the game and told go play, that's bad. Contraindicated, do not do that. Duh. They're inpatient.
Studies that say
they don't have self-regulation. That's why they're inpatient. Mm-hmm. If they were out in the world and functioning, they wouldn't need to be inpatient. So you don't do something like that to anybody who's inpatient like that. But with those that had structure and guidance and set rules when they could play and not play and engage and not engage, great success with people who are struggling. Now, again, this is a stereotype schizophrenia. Many do not have hallucinations and such.
Right.
They have delusions, word salad, all these other things. There's many. It's a whole spectrum of symptoms. But even for those who are having mild to moderate hallucinations, things like that they're really struggling with it. The research has shown on a limited basis, right? That's the problem. We need larger case studies, but that some are able with supervision to reduce medication, and that becomes a mindfulness practice, if you will, of, oh, I am now having another episode, which is part of what the training process is. If you're not just medicating, you still have to deal with medication for these, obviously. Mm-hmm. So another one you brought up that I went, yeah, you can't do much about the disorder itself was bipolar.
Yes.
Role-playing gaming will not treat bipolar. It is a physiological disorder. However, when you're not swinging too high or down too low to function, when you're in the in-between range or you're medicated so that you can stabilize, you can develop skills of mindfulness, social interaction, awareness of how you're interacting with people, getting all manic and doing all this and stuff and feel like, hey, dude, whoa, chill, right? The gaming environment can be kind of a safe place where people can have a little bit of that freedom to interact and give people a little bit of that feedback sometimes. So it is a place where skill development, again, I'm going to keep coming back to that over and over, a broad range of skill development, yes, social skills, but many others, and anything related to mindfulness and maladaptive thoughts and behaviors. And again, I've got compassion-focused therapy background, so I layer on neuroscience and compassion on top of the CBT, on top of the TR, on top of all the rest. And
it's a Sunday.
Yeah.
It's a cocktail almost.
It really can develop the necessary coping skills to at least not do, because with bipolar there can be a feedback loop. There's diet, exercise, environment, medication, meditation. All these things can help with regulating bipolar. And if you become more and more aware of your racing thoughts or your depressed thoughts, but it's more the racing thoughts that are a struggle in that area, you can start to take on, let's say, a very slow plotting character to try to ratchet yourself down. It takes effort, it takes training, it takes practice. But you can slow down so if you have a character, you intentionally pick a slow speaking character so that when you're manic, when you're Tigger, you start being more like Eeyore. And it helps slow those thoughts down a little more, right? I'm giving you extreme examples, but it's not going to cure bipolar. That is not going to happen. Mm-hmm. But with any psychotherapy and medication and other types of therapy, there's a mixture of medication to stabilize and skills development, of many different types of skills development. And on the skills development side is where you can consider role-playing gaming as a potential intervention modality with the right training.
Not everything is going to be on the mental scale.
Right.
That we have to treat. So, for example, cerebral palsy.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So cerebral palsy, muscular dystrophy, we worked a lot of different neurological and muscle disorders. And So with those, it's just
It's on the use it or lose it
It's
scale.
the use it or lose it. So you want them to keep doing the activities that are hard to slow down the deterioration. Picking up the pencil and trying to write, even if it's difficult. Picking up the dice and putting them in the dice tower, depending upon their level of function. We had somebody with CP at Merlin's all the time.
Right.
He chose not to do the surgeries after the first couple of surgeries where they cut his tendons and such. He's like, I'd rather be in a wheelchair. It's just too painful. I don't want to do it anymore. He's an adult now.
Right.
So he has chosen not to go through that pain. He was commenting how it was only when we got into the good game sessions that he could forget about his pain and his disability and get to just be a person who isn't racked with pain all the time. So, again, get him to immersion and flow state. That Csikszentmihalyi talks about, I didn't realize he was in a 2004 TED Talk. I came across that recently.
Oh, wow.
I added it to our links of training.
Okay, I'm going to have to watch that.
He talks about, and I think this is a little outdated as far as the specific number, but it's the general concept. He talks about we can only handle about 110 bits of information simultaneously. Our brain can only process. So that's a computer systems theory, and he doesn't fully ascribe to that, but that was one theory he brought up. The amount is still in debate, but the premise is our brain can only process so much data. So, for example, if you stub your toe, if you pinch yourself, one can override the other, but it's really hard to have the pain experience of two extreme pain simultaneously. One tends to flood out the other one.
Right.
And any kind of stimulus past a certain threshold tends to override the other. Your brain can only take so much data simultaneously. And getting into flow state can get you away from your pain, right? So you can be the best person you can be and set your pain aside, because if there's nothing you can do about it at that moment, no point dwelling on it, right? I mean,
yeah.
And you can do what you do. So he uses the example of somebody composing music, which I can relate to, right? I got to do that this week. And that the hand just started to write itself, and that having a floating experience, kind of an out-of-body experience. Part of that's related to that they're so immersed in the activity that they don't have, they kind of lose all the other stimulus sensation around them because it's taking so much of their brain function to do that activity at that peak level of performance. Right. And you can see I've got a 10-minute video on flow state, aka being in the zone, which kind of summarizes all of this.
So
with muscular dystrophy and CP, the kids got to be kids by doing LARP and tabletop.
And they got to use their abilities, the physical as much as they could, their mental abilities.
We exhausted them, which was what they wanted us to do.
They also started building friendships.
Yep.
Which they hadn't done all weekend.
And new ancillary activities between the painting and the making the shields and all these other things that get
drumming
triggered. Yeah, we did the drum circles, etc. Yeah, there's a lot of ancillary activities that can get triggered from role-playing gaming that open up just whole new vistas for these kids.
So I also brought up Alzheimer's and dementia.
That's a tricky one. So in general, with Alzheimer's specifically, late onset, not early onset. Early onset has a different level of deterioration. It's highly variable, and it's much more rare. The standard late onset Alzheimer's, typically from the point where symptoms are bad enough that you get a diagnosis, your life expectancy is about 8 years. And the question is, are you going to live it this way, or are you going to live it this way, where your quality of life is mostly sustained, and then at the last year or two just drops? Or is it going to be like this, where your quality of life just straight linear drops? So you at least get 4, 5, 6 good years before it really falls off. And it is a use or lose it thing to an extent. That only goes so far. Other types of dementia, highly variable. Brain injury dementia, it's a whole other thing. But specific to Alzheimer's, most of the treatments that have been shown to be effective, whether they're medication or intervention type, generally all they do is change the slope from this to that. And they're all about the same. If you look at all the data from the treatments that are actually effective, they all kind of have the same pattern, whether it's medication, whether it's intervention. The ones that work all do this. The ones that don't work, you just see this, or maybe a slight bump or whatever. So I've seen the same thing with role-playing gaming, where it delays because you're getting all that cognitive functioning going. And what it is, it's not actually stopping the disease.
No.
What your brain does is, because of neuroplasticity, even in the face of all of this, your brain starts, the parts of tissue that are still functional start taking over those functions. So less and less of your brain is working. But the areas that you're using that aren't destroyed yet keep functioning. And so the more you can do that, the longer you can delay those final phases. But again, the 8 years is the 8 years. And again, there's great breakthroughs happening in medication and gene therapy and stuff that will hopefully change that whole curve. But as far as role-playing gaming goes, it seems about as effective as any of the other. Now, this is without having any large controlled studies or anything like that. But it looks potentially, in following neuroplasticity theories, about the same as any of the other neuroplasticity-related interventions.
So then let's talk about TBI next, because it looks more like this, right?
So TBI is very individual, or any BI, any brain injury. Mm-hmm. Any brain injury is very specific because it's not like a disease that has, epidemiology of a very set pattern.
Mm-hmm. That's why I kind of did one of these.
Right. It's highly variable.
Because it's actually more like this.
Well, and it's completely variable, right? Where is the brain injury? It's going to be completely different. Every case is very individual. That's the tricky thing with brain injury. Certain regions, even if it's the same region of the brain, our brains are all wired a little differently, so that it affects people differently. Mm-hmm. But I've worked with brain injury with role-playing gaming, and we have this whole 4-step program from when they're coming out of coma, using the solo adventure books and modules interactively, using the computer-based, turn-based role-playing games before they can speak, but they have basic motion or eye control. Then going to the tabletop when they can speak or interact in some way a little bit more. That works on the motor skills a little bit as well as everything else they have to do. And then the live action to work on the bigger motor skills. So there's a whole 20-minute video on that program. That is all about neuroplasticity. That is all about trying to get the brain restarted, the areas that have shut down that don't have organic damage. And for the areas that do have organic damage, rewiring the brain to compensate for the areas that no longer function, to try to get as close to as possible back to normal function.
Now this brings up, the neuroplasticity is housing. The previous medical standard was that put them in a quiet room, let them rest.
Just 30, 40 years ago, put them in a quiet room, dim the lights, and leave them alone and don't disturb them. Worst thing you could do, there's an initial bring the swelling down and all this, and they're tired and all that. But what they found instead for the neuroplasticity to work is as soon as they can tolerate it, in short bits, it may be only 5 minutes at a time, but as soon as they can tolerate it, stimulation to a limit. You don't want to overstimulate them, but stimulation to get that brain to kick back in and get going makes a huge difference in their long-term prognosis. So it is the difference between the old way, which is you leave them there, and 3 years later, 2 to 3 years is typically the plateau of healing for brain. There's still some slow growth, but from down here, from all the injury to there's a 6-month real spike in progress. And then it kind of levels out, and then by 2 to 3 years, you're mostly at a plateau with at best a slight improvement if you do a lot. Mm-hmm. And if you're older, then not so much. If you left them in that room alone, they just stay down here, way down here. But if you engage them in the programs, it's like this. I mean, if you're talking 20% of function versus 60, 80% of function, that's a huge difference.
And I know it's per case basis, but it makes me want to think, how late is too late?
Well, it's never too late to do something, right? Because you can always slow down deterioration through engagement if it's applicable to that form of deterioration.
Right.
Yeah.
Or you can learn stuff, but there's optimal windows. That's the main thing, is optimal windows of intervention. Mm-hmm. And you've got that first few weeks to a few months where it's really optimal, and then it becomes less and less optimal as soon as you get past that. You got to get the swelling down and other levels of function back, but you want to do it within weeks and months if possible. And then try to keep doing it for at least 2 or 3 years, and then that's probably going to be your best long-term prognosis. If you keep doing it, that will help maintain.
I hate to bring up this next one because I know it's going to make everybody at the table cringe, but if we take a look at video game addiction and just make it addictive behaviors.
Right. Well, it is. It's no different than gambling addiction and all these other activity, endorphin-based, dopamine hit, all these activity-based addictions. It's the same thing. And creating a whole new separate category is just a money grab. It's it doesn't really. It's to get insurance companies to pay for it.
And it was also, I was going to say, the other part was it originally was a grab at making sure this wasn't something bigger than what we were, so that the studies would be there. to make sure it wasn't something bigger than what
No,
scientists were probably thinking.
this is pushed by some people who see dollar signs who want to make money in a very specific area, and unfortunately, it brings back more of the anti-gamer stigma and anti-gaming stigma. Now that's more focused on video games again, right? We cycle between the different activities, getting the focus, the spotlight. No, I think it does harm. Yes, it gets the money flowing, and that helps with research and things like that. So that's the good side of it. But I think the stigma associated with it, rather than because it's no different than the other types of behavioral-based addictions, and singling out video games as the culprit,
Right.
as opposed to it's a trait-based thing. Yeah, it does more harm than good, I think, in the inculcation of our culture.
Right. So with the assumption that it's actually just another branch of addictive personality.
No, I wouldn't go that far. That's a separate thing. Don't. Let's not go full addictive personality. Let's stick with traits
Okay.
that.
Well, my question is, how do you treat with role-playing games and people with addictive issues?
Well, if they're video game, I mean, so we've done it. We've worked with inpatient to outpatient transition.
Right.
People who have substance dependencies, gang behavior, whatever, different types of issues. And the key thing is, so most rehabs are only about 17% effective the first time, which is really bad, right? That's really bad.
That's
Repetition may help. And again, some people do great, but that's just on the average. So one of the big problems is a lot of them say don't and no without providing a replacement. No, you can't hang out with your old friends who did drugs and all of that, and don't do this activity that is your favorite recreational activity. Okay, what am I going to do instead for my leisure time? And who am I going to hang out with? We are social creatures. We have these large prefrontal cortexes to interact socially. You need to give them a different peer group to associate with and other activities to do for their leisure time. And if you can provide that, then their recidivism rate will be a lot better. And we have done this with, others with role-playing games to help with the transition, to give them a new peer group, a new recreational activity, etc. However, you do have to be careful about moderation, like anything else, and certainly they can go too far with it. So structure. What we do, we're running over here. We'll have to do a whole episode just on. I'll just go down the long
well, we
list of populations.
We did all of the hard ones, and now we're the.
Oh, there's many more. Many more.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
We didn't even get into kleptomania.
We just barely.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And we welcome you if you want to post ones like, well, what about this disorder or this population or this need? We have a whole on our old website. We have research, results by social, creative, intellectual, just topics broadly in general, by population, optimizing the experience. So we've got all these different ways that we look at the research and the applicability, which we should probably just do a whole episode on at some point, a special episode. But we gotta wrap up. I gotta go practice dancing with Katie, and then we've got coming up at 6 to 7 is our administrative meeting, and then 7 to 10 we'll be doing applied gaming at BECME, the Isle of Dread.
It's somewhere over there.
The classic Isle of Dread.
In the orange color.
Basic D&D going to the expert D&D. So, thank you for joining us. John, anything else you want to say before we bid adieu?
No, I think we're good. Spokane's coming up in August, and
ATRA. We didn't talk about ATRA.
Oh yeah, ATRA.
And we didn't talk about we're in the Spokane Parks and Rec catalog going forward. We'll be in their online catalog shortly, and in their fall catalog for their TR department. So we'll talk about that next week.
Yeah, that was supposed to be between the news but our news transitioned into the other.
That's fine.
Yeah.
We got a lot going on. Woohoo! Consider donating. rpgresearch.com/donate. You can donate through PayPal, or you can donate through Patreon. Get early access. These videos are broadcast live, and then the recordings, in case you can't catch them live, are sent to our Patreon supporters as a thank you for a month or more before the general public, and then it's all available to the public. Our blog postings go straight to, and our research goes straight to our Patreon supporters at the $25 on up level, a month or more before the general public as a thank you. So do please consider donating to the 501c3 nonprofit rpgresearch.com/donate. Donate today. And by the way, check out if you're here locally, STCU Creme 2 is who do you love? Who's your favorite nonprofit? This month's theme is working with children, which is what we do. We could win $2,500 if enough people vote. So please check that out. Just look up STCU or Creme 2, KREM, the number 2, space who do you love, and just put in your email and vote for RPG Research, and that would really help a lot. Wherever you may be well. Or did you have anything you want to say?
I was going to say links are probably on a lot of our things coming soon.
They're on our Twitter and Facebook so far.
Oh, yeah. So then what I was going to say. They're on our social media.
Wherever you may be well, happy gaming, and namarie.
Dream well.
Good night.